Oh, hey there. Didn't see you there. Welcome to the Fantasy Football Prodigy Podcast. My name is Tyler Anderson. I am your host, or should I say, my name is Linguini, and I'm here to cook up some Week 9 2025 analysis, and of course, my signature cuisine, my starts of the week for Week 9. So before we get into that, please make sure to drop a follow, subscribe, wherever you are enjoying. If you do want video to get the full chef effect, head over to YouTube, Fantasy Football Prodigy, sub up, and enjoy the pod there. Let me put my little spoon away here. We're not going to need that for a little bit, but we're recording this on we're November now. November 1st, Saturday. Halloween was yesterday, but we still have a spooky week ahead of us with some injuries and some situations that we got to monitor here moving forward. And in this episode, we are going to recap the Thursday night game from a couple nights ago, preview the rest of the Week 9 games, and then, of course, my signature starts of the week. You don't want to miss that. So let's just start with the Week 9 Thursday Night Football recap. Miami Dolphins taking on Baltimore Ravens at home. It did not go the Dolphins' way. They lost 28-6. The Ravens needed that win. They're now 3-5. They got Lamar Jackson back that game, and it obviously translated to good things for the offense. The Dolphins only scored 6 points. They had some brutal turnovers, but Lamar Jackson in his first game back in a hot minute. When did he last play? It's been a while. Looks like he last played in, where is it? The 28th of September. So it's been like a month. He played on the 30th of October. Before that, it was the 28th of September. So it had been a minute. He threw 4 touchdowns. 18 of 23, 204, 4 touchdowns. Almost a perfect quarterback rating, 143.2. I actually had just traded for Derrick Henry in my Dynasty League. I traded him away this offseason, and then I traded for him back. So I traded a 2028 first, because that's the only early pick I have for a while. Mason Taylor, a good rookie tight end, and then Caleb Johnson, who I took in the first this year and is giving me nothing. You know, he's not worth nothing, but at least for this season, I don't expect him to do much, if anything. So I traded that away. I got Derrick Henry, Deebo Samuel, wide receiver for the Commanders, and then a 2027 third. So, however Caleb Johnson turns out will probably affect how I feel about that trade, but Derrick Henry with Lamar Jackson coming back, I like him in general moving forward. I think he's a good buy low, and I still think he's a good buy low because he did not get in the end zone in this game. All the touchdowns went to Lamar Jackson through the passing game, 2 of them going to Mark Andrews, who I actually was playing against in that Dynasty League. So I traded for Henry, and then I'm playing against Andrews, and Andrews goes 2 for 22 with 2 touchdowns. So that's fantasy football in a nutshell. Lamar Jackson didn't do a ton on the ground. He didn't really need to, but also he is coming off the hamstring injury, so maybe they weren't wanting to re-aggravate that in any way. But he was 5 for 14 on the ground. Keaton Mitchell got involved, 4 for 11. Justice Hill had a couple catches and a carry, but Zay Flowers, 5 for 64. Didn't have a big game with Lamar Jackson back. Isaiah Likely, 3 for 60 on 4 targets. So he got the yards. And then Mark Andrews got the touchdowns. And then, yeah, that was pretty much the only stuff of note there. Derrick Henry did finish 19 for 119. By the way, I probably should say that. No touchdowns, but looked really good. Had over 100 yards. Still a good game. Added 1 for 2 through the air on 1 target. And then on the other side, Tua, 261, no touchdowns, 1 pick. Waddle had a decent game on 9 targets. He put up 6 for 82. Greg Dulcich, tight end for the Dolphins. He was kind of a guy that was interesting for Dynasty back in the day with the Broncos, and he kind of fell out of favor. Been bouncing around the league a little bit, but with Darren Waller out for the Dolphins, they activated him from the practice squad, and he actually looked pretty good, 5 for 49. Might be someone to monitor moving forward as a streaming option until Darren Waller comes back. He's on the injured reserve, so it'll be at least 3 more weeks, I believe is the math, right? He got put on it last week. You got to be on it for at least 4 weeks once you're on IR, and it could be longer. But I also dropped him in my Dynasty League this season, so now that I dropped him, he'll probably have a little career resurgence and be one of those many people that I drop and does well in Dynasty. Other than that, Malik Washington was 3 for 48 on 3 targets. Just continues to not really take much advantage of that role with Tyreek Hill out. He also had a fumble that he lost. And then Devon Achan was 6 for 39 on 10 targets. So you love the 10 targets. Didn't do much with him, but in PPR leagues, that's great. He had 14 for 67 on the ground. So he's been great for fantasy, but, you know, this offense is going to limit his upside at times, but he's such a good PPR option. It doesn't super matter. And Malik Washington also had 3 carries for 13 yards. So he's involved there. Just pretty gross in general. So Ollie Gordon had 2 for 6, 1 for 3 through the air. So it was all Ravens all day, and they're going to try to make a playoff push here. So before we get into the rest of the week 9 analysis of what's coming up, we're going to cook up my starts of the week. So I'm going to go position by position and just kind of give you, you know, some plays that I want to highlight. So I'm going to try to not, you know, tell you to play like Christian McCaffrey because that's kind of too obvious. But quarterback start of the week, Daniel Jones of the Indianapolis Colts on the road against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Indiana Jones has... Wait, hold on. Let me get my prop. Indiana Jones has been cooking for the Colts this season. I'm going to put that away now. Should I keep it out? I don't know. He's the quarterback 6 in points per game and the quarterback 4 overall on the season, which is just tremendous for Danny Dimes. We thought his career was over, but he's looked good since joining the Colts. This week, he gets to take on a Steelers defense that is giving up the 4th most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks on the season. This game has an awesome 50.5 point over-under, and I could see this thing hitting the over if both offenses are rolling. Danny Dimes has the ingredients around him to create an exquisite meal of a game. Michael Pittman has been putting up wide receiver 1 production this season. Tyler Warren might be the best tight end play on the week. And even wide receiver Alec Pierce has been making some big plays and is a sneaky good start this week. Also, don't forget about wide receiver Josh Downs, who has had a bit of a slower start to the season, but is a talented player who could make plays in this game. Jonathan Taylor should get his in the running game, but I like Daniel Jones as a mid-quarterback 1 in week 9. That's my quarterback. Let me get this spoon put away here. I got more tools here, so let me get my props ready. Okay, ready? Running back start of the week, Kimani Vidal of the Los Angeles Chargers on the road against the Tennessee Titans. Vidal has been filling in admirably as the starter after Omarion Hampton went down to injury. I give his recent performance 5 stars. He has been a top 8 running back in 2 of the last 3 games. What should I use for this one? I'll do both. You really need the video to get the full effect of this, guys. This is great stuff. He should be able to chef up another good game for fantasy this week as he gets to take on the Titans, who are giving up the 3rd most fantasy points per game to running backs on the season. I like Kimani Vidal as a low running back 1, high running back 2 in week 9. All right, we can put the props away for a little bit here. All right. Anyways, moving on. I have another running back start of the week, a bit of a bonus. There were 2 guys I wanted to highlight. So, running back start of the week, Kyle Monangai of the Chicago Bears on the road against the Cincinnati Bengals. There are a number of backs who will be stepping into larger roles due to injury this week, but I want to highlight Monangai. He has seen his role increase as the season has gone along, and now that starting running back DeAndre Swift, as well as fellow rotation back Roshan Johnson, have been ruled out for this game, Monangai should see a huge role in the backfield on the menu this week. In addition to the increase in opportunity, he gets a great matchup with the Bengals defense that has given up the most fantasy points per game to running backs on the season. I like Kyle Monangai as a mid to high running back 2 in week 9. Moving on to the wide receiver position. Wide receiver start of the week, DK Metcalf of the Pittsburgh Steelers at home against the Indianapolis Colts. Metcalf has had a weird season, but despite not having more than 5 catches in any game, he keeps finding a way to serve up goodness for fantasy football most weeks. And he is actually the wide receiver 13 in fantasy points per game. I have confidence he will find a way to get it done again this week in a tasty matchup with the Colts, who are giving up the 4th most fantasy points per game to wide receivers. This game also has a spicy 50.5 point over-under, so it's a great game environment and could turn into a shootout, or as I call it, a food fight, which would just be great news for the big play wide receiver. I like DK Metcalf as a mid to high wide receiver 2 in week 9. And then finally, moving on to the tight end position. Tight end start of the week, Zach Ertz of the Washington Commanders at home against the Seattle Seahawks. Zach Ertz has been solid but unspectacular at tight end for fantasy this season, but that might be just the recipe you need if you lack a locked-in starter at the position. Ertz is the tight end 15 in fantasy points per game and the tight end 9 overall on the season. This week, he gets a tasty matchup with the Seahawks. Quarterback Jaden Daniels is back from injury, which is good news for the team's pass catchers. While on the topic of pass catchers, wide receiver Terry McLaurin has been ruled out for this game, so Ertz and wide receiver Deebo Samuel should be served a lot of the targets in the passing game. I like Ertz as a low tight end 1, high tight end 2 in week 9. All right, so those are my starts of the week. Last week we did really well. Bo Nix, Cortland Sutton did not great, but he was all right. Bo Nix was awesome, both against Dallas. Breece Hall was great against Cincinnati Bengals. I didn't end up making a clip out of that segment, but I should have because he went off. I made a clip for all the other guys. And then Tucker Kraft, he was phenomenal. So hopefully we can run it back with another good week here. So moving on to the rest of the week 9 analysis of the games coming up. Bye weeks, we got the Cleveland Browns, New York Jets, Philadelphia Eagles, and the Tampa Bay Bucks. Let me put my spoon back here because we might need that. So make sure you always have that handy as a chef. Let's start with the Houston Texans at home against the Denver Broncos. This game is a little bit gross, so let's get it out of the way. Broncos are 6-2. The Texans are 3-4. It's only a 40.5 point over/under, so that's gross. It's expected to be a low-scoring kind of defensive battle. The Texans are 1.5 point home favorites. The Broncos are going to be without Pat Surtain at cornerback, so that kind of helps by making their defense worse. And then for the Houston Texans, Dalton Schultz at tight end is considered questionable. Marvin Mims at wide receiver is out for the Broncos, so that might give a boost to Troy Franklin at wide receiver behind, wide receiver 1 Cortland Sutton. Maybe Pat Bryant sneaks in there, but I'm not really looking to start any of those guys just because the Texans are a pretty brutal matchup just across the board for all positions. They're giving up the 3rd fewest points to wide receivers. At quarterback, Bo Nix is one of those guys that's always an option given his mobility, but he's more in the quarterback 2 range. Like I loved him last week against the Dallas Cowboys and he went off, but this week the Texans are giving up the fewest points per game to quarterbacks in the league. So you can probably find a better option than Bo Nix. RJ Harvey had a big game last week for fantasy, but he really didn't see a ton of volume. It was just a great matchup with the Cowboys, and J.K. Dobbins is still seemingly the guy. I would rather play J.K. Dobbins. The Houston Texans are, a tough matchup against running backs, not as bad as they are against, quarterbacks and running back and wide receivers, but they're still a tough, stingy matchup against running backs. But I'm not looking to chase Harvey's production after last week. Only 7 carries and 1 target. Turned into 7 for 46 and 2 on the ground, and he caught his 1 target for a 5-yard touchdown. So maybe it's a good thing of signs to come for the rookie, but this is still J.K. Dobbins' backfield, and I would prefer to start him. With that being said, Dobbins is still in more of the running back 2 range, just given the matchup, but he gets enough volume where he should be okay if you have bye weeks or injuries or whatever. And then Cortland Sutton at wide receiver, again, he's just going to be a little bit nerfed this week. I get he more of a wide receiver 2, then sometimes he can sneak into that wide receiver 1 projection range in the right matchup. Like last week against Dallas, I loved him, and he didn't have a fantastic game, but you kind of have to play your stars against Dallas. Against the Houston Texans, you're still probably starting him, but maybe limit expectations a little bit. And then Evan Ingram at tight end, I'm not looking to start him. He'll get some targets from time to time, but he's not doing much with them. And again, the Texans are just a brutal matchup, giving up the 5th fewest points of tight ends on the season. So a few guys you can turn to, but maybe limited upside. And, it's a gross matchup, so you might have better options. On the Texans side of the ball, CJ Stroud, he's been kind of putting it together for fantasy. The Broncos are a very tough matchup for quarterbacks, giving up the 3rd fewest points per game to quarterbacks on the season. So Stroud is, again, kind of like Bo Nix in that quarterback 2 range. I'd rather play Bo Nix than Stroud. You have Nick Chubb and Woody Marks there. Nick Chubb, as gross as it is, as he is for fantasy, he's been, getting volume. Last week he saw 17 carries. I'm not looking to start him. He's like a running back 3 in this game, but if in a pinch you can play him as just a volume guy and hope he falls in the end zone. And then kind of a similar thing with Woody Marks. Like, I think Chubb is more likely to get more volume, but Woody Marks is probably more likely to do more with the volume he receives. Last week he was 11 for 62, 4 for 49 through the air. So not really looking to start either of these guys other than like running back 3s, but you can start them in a pinch, but I would try to find better options. Nico Collins at wide receiver. He should be back from injury. The Broncos are giving up the fewest points per game to wide receivers, but again, Surtain is going to be out for this game. He's the top corner for the Broncos, so I would play him pretty much no matter what. He might have more, high wide receiver 2 upside this week, but without Surtain there and with how well Stroud has been looking a little bit better lately, so Nico's pretty much guaranteed to be in your lineup. And then I'm not looking to start like Christian Kirk or Higgins or Noel in this matchup, but people to monitor moving forward. And then you got Dalton Schultz at tight end listed as questionable. I haven't heard kind of if he's expected to play. It looks like he's just truly questionable right now. So look, this says he's on the favorable side of questionable, but either way, you probably have better options at tight end, because that's kind of gross. So kind of a gross game. Let's move on. This game is much more exciting. The Indianapolis Colts on the road against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Colts are 7-1. The Steelers are 4-3. 50.5 point over under. We talked about that in the starts of the week segment. So that's great. A lot of points expected to be scored. And the Colts are 3.5 point road favorites. So obviously on the Colts side of the ball, there's a lot of good options that you can turn to. I guess the one to get out of the way would be Jonathan Taylor at running back. Every week he's scoring like 30 points. I don't know if he's gonna, do that again, but he definitely could. And the Steelers defense hasn't really looked that great in general lately. So I like a lot of guys on the Colts, but Daniel Jones is my quarterback start of the week. He's been great, and the Steelers are a great matchup. So play him with confidence, like I said, as a quarterback 1. Jonathan Taylor's an auto start. And then Michael Pittman at wide receiver. He's been so good for fantasy. And I almost made him a start of the week, but instead I just kind of mentioned him in the Danny Dime segment. And I made DK Metcalf on the other side of the ball the start of the week. But Michael Pittman he's just been so solid. This offense is like historically good right now. If you don't realize that, like they are just absolutely humming. So Michael Pittman is like a high wide receiver 2, borderline wide receiver 1 in this game. Steelers are giving up the 6th most points to wide receivers on the season, and he's just been nothing but great. So Michael Pittman's in there. You can take some shots on these other guys like Alec Pierce or Josh Downs. I would personally lean Alec Pierce, but you can start Josh Downs in a pinch just given the matchup if you don't have like other good options. But Alec Pierce has been pretty darn solid. He's kind of a big play guy, but this offense is, kind of rolling with the big plays and just in general. So you can put him in there as a flex if you're desperate. And then Tyler Warren, he might be the number 1 play at tight end on the week. The Steelers are the 2nd best matchup for tight ends just overall on the season. And he's a phenomenal talent. So when you mix those things together, the talent, the matchup, the high over under, he's a great start. So, I thought about making him a start of the week, but again, like that's that seemed a little bit too obvious to me. And then for the Steelers, there are people you can play here, so that I am excited about. So DK Metcalf at wide receiver is sort of the pass catcher that I would be looking to start. The Colts are giving up the 4th most points to wide receivers. There might be room for Calvin Austin or Roman Wilson to make plays. Roman Wilson finally had like a decent game for fantasy last week for the first time in his career. I probably wouldn't look to start these guys outside of maybe DFS or like super deep leagues, but there is going to be, probably opportunity for a pass catcher outside of Metcalf to produce, and that could turn out to be, Jonnu Smith, Pat Freiermuth, Darnell Washington, Connor Hayward at tight end. You just never know when one of those guys might get in the end zone. But DK Metcalf is obviously, the guy you want there. And then Jaylen Warren, he's been really solid pretty much each and every week. the Colts are a little stingier against the run on the season, the 26th most points allowed. So that's bad for running backs. But Jaylen Warren is involved as a runner and a pass catcher where he's kind of game script proof. I think they'll find a way to get him touches no matter what. And if this game goes, bananas and it hits the over, I think he's going to be, have a little bit of upside for fantasy. So he's in that high running back 2 range this week, just because he's so consistent with the volume and it's an exciting game. So I think he's a safe play at worst. And then at best, if this game goes crazy and he gets in the end zone, maybe we see him actually like win people some weeks, but he'll need to get in the end zone for that probably. And then Aaron Rodgers, he's been streamable at times in a game with this high of an over under. Colts are an okay matchup for quarterbacks. So you can put him out there in like a 2 quarterback league. He's in that kind of quarterback 2 range. Him versus, like, I'd rather play him over Stroud, or like, Geno, McCarthy, Penix. If you have Flacco, Trevor Lawrence, Sam Darnold, those are kind of more interesting conversations. He's kind of in that tier, but yeah, very exciting game, and that should be a good one. Moving on to a game I'm kind of sad to talk about. The Minnesota Vikings, my Vikings, on the road against the Detroit Lions. My Vikings are 3-4. The Lions are 5-2. It's got a decent 48.5 point over under, but the Lions are 8.5 point favorites. So they're basically saying the Lions should score a lot, and the Vikings may or may not. It looks like JJ McCarthy is going to be back in the starting lineup for the Vikings, which I think is good. Carson Wentz is out for the season now. He was playing through that brutal shoulder injury. And yeah, on the road in Detroit, I love the Vikings, but this is going to be a tough test for the team. There's a few defensive injuries, or just injuries in general for the Vikings. So CJ Ham at fullback is out. It might not seem like a big thing, but if you're a Vikings fan, he's involved. He's a big part of the team. Metellus, safety, questionable. Andrew Van Ginkel, linebacker, questionable. Josh Oliver at tight end is out, big blocker. Jeff Okudah at cornerback is out. And then this is big for the offense. Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill, both questionable for the Vikings, the left tackle and right tackle. So, hopefully they play, and if they play, hopefully they're 100%. But, having that protection is going to be big for the Vikings offense, because if McCarthy's back, they're getting pressured. I could see it going poorly for the team as a whole. But I guess we'll start with the Vikings side of the ball. I'm not starting McCarthy. I'm not starting Hawkinson at tight end. If you're looking for guys you actually can start, Justin Jefferson is obviously an auto start each and every week. And Jordan Addison as the wide receiver 2 there has actually been really, really good. Maybe if you're only paying attention to Jefferson and you don't know what Addison has been doing, he has been really, really good for fantasy, even with some questionable quarterback play. We'll see what we get out of McCarthy, but the Lions are the 7th best matchup for wide receivers on the season. So I think you can start Addison if you don't have a super deep team. Like, I'm in a 10-team league where I have like CeeDee Lamb, Roma Dunze, and JSN. I'm not starting Addison in that league as much as I want to, but he's a borderline wide receiver 2. He's probably still a wide receiver 3, just, given the variance there. But he's got upside. He could get in the end zone, especially if they're trailing. Jefferson is a must-start wide receiver 1. And then in the running back room, now that Aaron Jones is back, I'm really not confident to play Jordan Mason. If I had to play one between him and Aaron Jones, I would lean Aaron Jones in a pinch, but you really don't have to start him as anything other than like a running back 3. The Lions are the 4th toughest matchup for running backs. There's a chance that the Vikings are losing for most of this game. So there's the only real hope for any of these guys is that Aaron Jones is involved as a pass catcher and he gets a few dump offs. And then on the Lions side of the ball, this is where, I think someone on this team is going to have a big game. Who is it going to be? I don't know. Are they going to do it through the air or on the ground? You never really know. With the Lions, it seems like they can kind of just decide most weeks, but Jared Goff is in the high quarterback 2, low quarterback 1 conversation, just because he can always pop off and have a big game, and this is definitely a spot where he could do that. If you want to go with a safer option, that's totally viable as well, but he's still a viable play. Jahmyr Gibbs is obviously an auto start at running back. So quarterback matchup wise, the Vikings are giving up the 20th most points to quarterbacks on the season, and the 21st most points per game to running backs. So the Vikings theoretically have a solid defense. They are, maybe going to be missing some people. And just from watching the games, I do know that there are times where, like, if talented players can exploit this defense, just, especially if the game script isn't going their way. So I'm not really shying away from Jahmyr Gibbs. Amon-Ra St. Brown obviously is a start. David Montgomery is someone you can start as a running back too. Could definitely see him getting in the end zone in this game. Jameson Williams, Isaac Tesla, probably looking for better options there at wide receiver. Maybe monitor to see if Tesla gets more involved. Jameson has been pretty disappointing this season. You can start him as a boomer bust, like wide receiver 3. But that's about it. I was pretty high on him coming into the season, but coming out of the bye week, they had a week 8 bye. So we'll see if they shake things up in the receiver room, because Tesla, the rookie at wide receiver, is a pretty exciting prospect that I wouldn't be surprised if they want to get him, more involved. And then the Vikings are a pretty tough matchup at wide receiver. So you don't have to stick those, outside of Amon-Ra, you don't have to play any of those guys. And then at tight end, Sam Laporta is someone who I personally am just never excited. I don't have him in any leagues. I wasn't excited to draft him. I'm never excited to recommend him or play him in DFS, but he does have big game ability. So if you have him, you're probably starting him. He's more of a low tight end 1 for me, but he is one of those guys that can put up, he can get in the end zone and put up a big game. So if you have him, you're probably starting him. And I forgot to mention Taylor Decker, left tackle for the Lions, is questionable. So we'll see what the deal is with that. But hopefully the Vikings can pull it out. But I think we might get cooked. Get it? Because I'm a chef. Anyways, Carolina Panthers traveling to Green Bay to take on the Packers. The Panthers are 4-4. Packers are 5-1-1. Let's see what the line is. 43.5 point over under. Packers are 12.5 point favorites at home. So they're expecting kind of a blowout for the Packers, which I think makes perfect sense. I'm not surprised to hear that whatsoever. The Packers are a really good team, and the Panthers are not. So on the Panthers side of the ball, Bryce Young should be back at quarterback. In the running back room, Rico Dowdle, based on some quotes from the team, it looks like he's going to kind of take over as more of the primary back over Chuba Hubbard. Whereas, he filled in admirably. Like, he was back-to-back week-winning games with Chuba Hubbard out. Then Chuba comes back. They kind of split the work 50-50. It seems like Rico Dowdle is going to take more of a workload than just 50-50 and kind of be the lead back there. It's a tough matchup against the Packers, but he's a running back 2 this week, and we'll see how the volume plays out. I'm not looking to start Chuba Hubbard, but he could get some volume, and both of these guys are one injury away from being back to a stud. But if Rico Dowdle gets all the volume, that's probably the best thing for fantasy, because if they both split volume, even if Rico gets a little bit more than 50-50, if he's not seeing a sizable workload on this Panthers offense, it might kind of just make both mid and not great for fantasy, and I'd rather have Rico just be great. Ted McMillan, wide receiver, he's been a little disappointing, but I think you still fire him up. He's been solid. He had a good week last week. I think he's a really solid wide receiver 2, honestly. Last week, 10 targets, 7 for 99. That was with Andy Dalton. We'll see how he plays with Bryce Young back in the lineup, but I think he's probably in your lineup in most cases, unless you have if you took Michael Pittman late, I'd probably play Pittman over him. That's kind of the best example I can think of where somebody you drafted late, you might play over him. Not playing Leggett or Coker, and then I'm not touching Jatavian Sanders or Tommy Tremble. And then on the Packers side of the ball, Like I said, the Packers are big favorites at home, so this could be a Josh Jacobs game where he just kind of, you know, the Packers are winning and they just kind of run the ball to ice the game. So Josh Jacobs is a must start or running back one. Jordan Love, he's playing really good football. Last week against was that the Steelers? Was that last week that he had that big game? Yeah, he had 360 yards, 3 touchdowns against Pittsburgh. He's been playing great NFL football, but a lot of weeks he hasn't really been needed to do much, and I could definitely see that happening this week. So he's still a low-end quarterback 1, high quarterback 2, kind of in a similar range to like Jared Goff. Jordan Love is probably, I don't know. I don't know who I would lean there. Maybe Jordan Love, because both of these quarterbacks are in a similar situation where it just depends how much they throw the ball. If they don't throw the ball, if the touchdowns go to Gibbs and Josh Jacobs, then they won't have good games for fantasy. But both are playable. But it could be disappointing if Jordan Love doesn't need to do much. At wide receiver, Wicks is out, Jaden Reed is still out, so you got Romeo Doubs, Matthew Golden, Christian Watson. You can take a shot on any of those guys, but none are must starts. Romeo Doubs is probably the safest. Christian Watson probably has a little more upside, but we've seen Romeo Doubs have a 3 touchdown game, so all are kind of like wide receiver 3s or 4s. You can put him in a flex if you need to, but the guy I really want to start this week in the pass catcher department for that team is Tucker Kraft at tight end. He's just been a stud, like just phenomenal player, yards after the catch, demon. I wish I got him in more leagues, but I got him in my guillotine league, and him and Jonathan Taylor and Amon-Ra St. Brown, like I hit on those picks, and my team is looking really good. I got Josh Allen for cheap. Just if you guys have used that guillotine league website, it's so like messed up how they like sort the free agents, because if they're on bye, it only sorts it by projected points. So if you're on bye, you don't show up. So you kind of have to like make a note of who's available. And I got Josh Allen for like basically free. So anyways, I digress. Moving on, we got the San Francisco 49ers at the New York Giants. 49ers are 5-3. Giants are 2-6. Looks like the 49ers are 2.5 point road favorites. Over under is 48.5. The Giants have just had a ton of injuries. They lost Malik Neighbors weeks ago, and then last week they lost Cam Scadaboo, which is just terrible for football. He was arguably my favorite player in the league at this point, even though I had him in my guillotine league actually that I was just talking about. So I lost him. I might have to start like Aaron Jones or something this week, which is tough, but really sucks. But that opens up an opportunity for Tyrone Tracy. So he's going to be the starter for the Giants. He's been good. Like last year, and when he's been the starter in the past, he's been serviceable, not necessarily the most electric player, but he's a good pass catcher. And he should see a lot of volume here. Devin Singletary is still there. He should be the backup. It looks like Tracy is going to be the main guy. But, Commanders are kind of middle of the pack against running backs. Their defense is weird because they've had so many injuries. So, last week it kind of looked like maybe things were starting to fall apart against the Texans. So we'll see how they respond. Oh my gosh, there's a fly in here. What the heck? But Tyrone Tracy is like a solid running back too, and you just hope he PPRs his way to success and maybe gets in the end zone. Jackson Dart at quarterback, even though he's missing his weapons, like he runs enough where he's still in that low quarterback 1 conversation, even without the weapons there. I mean, when you consider the pieces he's missing, like, and the team he's on, and to look as good as he has, like he might be the real deal. And then like at wide receiver, it's so gross. You got Wan'Dale Robinson, and then Darius Slayton is a name to kind of keep an eye on and maybe stash on your on your bench from the waiver wire if he's still there. Probably not starting him this week outside of like deep leagues. You could probably play Slayton, but someone has to catch passes here. It's going to be Slayton and Wan'Dale Robinson. And last week Slayton did have a big touchdown catch called back on a kind of phantom penalty. So if that would have counted, I think a lot of people would be more excited to play him. So he's someone that you can flex in a deep league. Same with Wan'Dale Robinson, but would prefer to take a wait and see approach. And then Theo Johnson at tight end. The position is shallow enough where he's someone you could play as like a tight end 2, but it's possible you have better options. You're kind of just hoping for a touchdown from him. And then for the 49ers, Christian McCaffrey is a great start this week. Obviously, he's an auto start. So I haven't heard a late update on what the quarterback situation is. It's kind of gone back and forth for a long time. So it looks like Mac Jones is going to start. Yep. So so Mac Jones is officially starting. Brock Purdy could be available, but I feel like Brock Purdy has been close to coming back for a while now. So it's kind of, I'm not sure what the deal is there, but the Giants defense can be exploited. You know, Christian McCaffrey is the guy you auto start. They're a good matchup for quarterbacks, giving up the 5th most points per game to quarterbacks. You know, you could stream Mac Jones if you're super desperate as a quarterback too, but you probably have, you know, better options like Darnold. Probably go Rodgers over him, Flacco if he's healthy, Love, Goff, Stafford. And then at wide receiver, you know, Ricky Pearsall is out again. So theoretically, Jawan Jennings should have opportunity, but he's nothing more than like a wide receiver 3 ranking wise at this point, just because he really hasn't done much for fantasy. He's been very like, I don't know. He hasn't like, what's the word? Put up stats with the opportunities. I think he might at some point, but we have to actually see it happen. And then Kendrick Bourne again. I mean, Born again, didn't mean to say that. He had some games in the past, but it's looking like probably not someone you want to rely on. And then all in all, that's to say George Kittle should be a good play at tight end. It's been a little slow since he came back from injury a couple weeks ago, but he's basically a must start. You know, if you took Warren or Kraft later in the draft and we're playing them, okay, maybe play them over Kittle. But other than that, you know, you're probably starting Kittle. Yeah, it's pretty much McCaffrey and Kittle are the only guys I'm really confident in. Yeah, so we'll hopefully Brock Purdy comes back and you know, Pearsall comes back and we get some more fantasy goodness there. All right, for my video listeners, viewers, sorry for the cut there. My lady needed the spoon for some TikTok or something, so I'm spoonless. We'll go ahead and put the fork in the arms. Oh my goodness, it doesn't even fit. Pause. Wow, that's a tight. Oh, I have this. Perfect. Oh yeah, that looks great. I'm such a chef. Anyways, moving on. Chicago Bears at the Cincinnati Bengals. Bears are 4-3. Bengals 3-5. 51.5 point over under. Holy smokes. Bears are 2.5 point road favorites. A lot of this game really does hinge on the health of Joe Flacco. He's questionable. It looks like the plan is for him to start, so I really hope that happens. And the Bengals are going to most likely be without Trey Hendrickson, defensive end. He's doubtful, so that just means, you know, worse defense, more points for fantasy, baby. For the Bears, injury-wise, the big news there, DeAndre Swift, starting running back, is out, as well as fellow backfield mate Roschon Johnson. So Kyle Monangai, who I highlighted earlier, is a great start this week. And then Luther Burden at wide receiver is out, so that might have a little more clarity in that receiver room that can sometimes be a little bit crowded for the Bears. But on the Bears side of the ball, Caleb Williams he's been kind of up and down his whole career and this season. He's playable as a low quarterback 1 this week. He can have big games. The last couple of weeks have been disappointing. No touchdowns each of the last couple of games. They've kind of been running the ball, especially against the Saints. They just ran the ball in week 7 a ton. With no Swift and no Roschon, maybe they rely on Caleb a little bit more. So he's playable, but he has some risk. But given the matchup against the Bengals defense, that's a good matchup. So he's playable, and you hope that they need him to throw a little bit, which they should, because the Bengals should be able to put up points in this game. And the Bengals defense is the best matchup for running backs. So like I said earlier, Kyle Monangai should have the backfield all to himself. Travis Homer is there as well, but it should be the Monangai show. And, you know, he is a playable running back too. And then in the wide receiver room, the guy you really want would be Rome Odunze. He's a wide receiver 1, honestly. He's had a few disappearing acts, but I would be looking to play him. And then DJ Moore has been very disappointing this season with no Luther Burden there. Maybe that secures his target volume a little bit, but he's kind of more of a wide receiver 3 this week, I would say. And he has a chance to make a play in this matchup, but we'll see. And then Cole Kmet is back, so kind of nerfs the Colston Loveland hype. I wouldn't be looking to start either of those guys. And then for the Bengals, this is assuming Joe Flacco plays. If Jake Browning is a starter and Flacco is out, I don't want to start T. Higgins. I'm still starting Jamar Chase, and then Chase Brown would obviously take a bit of a hit, but still be startable. But if Joe Flacco starts, he's a high quarterback 2 with upside. Hopefully, if he starts, he's actually fully healthy with that shoulder injury. The Bears are giving up the 9th most points per game to quarterbacks. So it's a good matchup, and he's been great for fantasy. He has great weapons there. And the Bears are the 10th best, tied for 9th best matchup for running backs. And Chase Brown has been really good since Joe Flacco took over as the quarterback and gave this offense a chance to actually move the ball. So he's a really solid running back 2 this week. And then obviously you're starting Jamar Chase pretty much no matter what as a must-start wide receiver 1. And then T. Higgins you can throw out there as a wide receiver 2. If you don't have better options. Last week he only had 1 catch on 2 targets, but it was a 44-yard touchdown. The week before that he saw 10 targets, turned into 6 for 96 and a touchdown. So he's been viable for fantasy, and it's a good matchup. And then at tight end, probably not looking to start like Noah Fant. A couple weeks ago he was 4 for 44 and a touchdown. Last week 3 for 41, no touchdown. So maybe if he has another, I don't know, he's not seeing a ton of targets, but tight end is so gross. Just maybe he's someone that becomes viable, but with the Joe Flacco offense, but probably not. And then moving on, we got the Falcons at the Patriots. Atlanta Falcons are 3-4. New England Patriots are 6-2. 45.5 point over under. The Patriots are 4.5 point home favorites. And the Falcons are a weird team. We don't know who's going to show up. The Patriots are expected to win at home, which probably means the Falcons will blow them out just based on how that team has been playing. But the big injury news is Ramondre Stevenson is out for the Patriots at running back. So we'll see how the running back touches get distributed. Talented rookie running back Travion Henderson has been underutilized. Will he see a big bump in volume with this Ramondre injury? Or will he continue to kind of play second fiddle to someone else? That someone else would probably be Terrell Jennings or Dearness Johnson at running back. I think Henderson sees a bump in volume, but I don't think he's going to see like 20 plus touches. And I think Terrell Jennings will be involved. If I had to play one, I guess I would play Henderson as a risky high running back 3, low running back 2. DFS, fine playing him. If you want to take a shot on Terrell Jennings or Dearness Johnson in DFS, you can do that as well. But it's definitely kind of a murky situation. But Drake May at quarterback, he's been so good. And he's basically a start each and every week. The Falcons are a tough matchup, giving up the 5th fewest points to quarterbacks on the season, but I don't super care. I think I'm starting Drake May in most cases as a quarterback 1. And then, they're a tough matchup against receivers as well, giving up the 5th fewest points to receivers on the season. If you have to start one, Stephon Diggs is probably in that wide receiver 2 range. Kayshon Boutte has been getting it done on big plays. He could make a big play in this game. Not seeing a ton of volume where I'm super confident starting him, but in deep leagues or DFS, he's a dart throw. And then Hunter Henry is basically a touchdown or bust type of play, a tight end 2 at this point. The Falcons are giving up the fewest overall points per game to tight ends on the season, which I know that stat can be kind of fluky just based on who you're playing. Like if you're playing an elite tight end, you're going to give up more points than if you're playing like a team that doesn't have a tight end or utilize their tight end. But it's just given the season as a whole, they're not giving it up to tight ends. And then, for the Falcons, Penix should be starting. Kirk Cousins was a disaster last week, so Penix should be back. Looks like Drake London at receiver is going to be back, so I'm not looking to start Penix. But I think him being back as a whole will help the offense. Drake London immediately goes back in the lineup as a wide receiver 1, high wide receiver 2. And then Bijan Robinson, you're obviously starting each and every week. Just know that the Patriots are giving up the 5th fewest points to running backs on the season. So it is a little bit of a tougher matchup. But one interesting kind of note here, Kyle Pitts is a decent play this week. I almost made him a start of the week. The Patriots are the 6th best matchup for tight ends on the season. Kyle Pitts has actually been pretty solid for fantasy. So you can start him as like a low tight end 1. He hasn't been winning you weeks usually, but he is seeing solid volume and can PPR his way to a decent game. Not looking to start Darnell Mooney, but hopefully we see him get involved, because there were times last year where he was like a decent fantasy asset. And then we got the LA Chargers at the Tennessee Titans. Chargers are 5-3. The Titans are 1-7. The Chargers are big favorites here. I'm looking for the exact line, but yeah, 9.5 point road favorites. Over under is 43.5. So the Chargers are expected to score. The Titans are not. So where do we even start here? So on the Titan side of the ball, no Calvin Ridley again. So, you're going to have Alec Ayamaner and Chimera DK, if I'm saying that right, at wide receiver. Both have, flashed at times, but I'm probably not, looking to start either of them. The Chargers are a pretty tough matchup for wide receivers. I will say the Titans passing game has looked a little bit better since their coaching change. And with no Ridley, Ayamaner will have some opportunity, but probably more of a DFS play, very deep league play. Maybe you stash them on the bench. And then the running back room is also a little bit gross right now. Tony Pollard was kind of getting all the volume while Spears was on IR. Tajay Spears came back. He's been getting more and more involved. It looks like Spears has more juice, but he is still splitting with Tony Pollard. Both are kind of unspectacular running back 3s, very similar range. And until one of them kind of takes a hold of the volume, neither is like super exciting for fantasy in general. But in a pinch, you could start either of them, but I don't want to. And then, not starting Cam Ward. I love Chigakonkwo, but not looking to start him either, unfortunately, is as exciting of an athlete as he is. And then for the Chargers, Justin Herbert at quarterback is a phenomenal play. They should be able to do whatever they want on offense. The Titans aren't giving up a ton of points to quarterbacks, probably mostly because teams don't really have to throw against them because they're winning the whole game. So that's the only risk with Herbert, but he's still like a mid to high quarterback 1, especially when you consider the injuries to that running back room. Kimani Vidal, start of the week, is a great start. But, with him and Jarrett Patterson being the only guys there, maybe they, instead of just running it every play to end the game, maybe Herbert, throws it slightly more than he would have otherwise if they had Hampton and, the other, and Najee there. But yeah, Vidal is a great start. What was the other guy's name? Hassan Haskins is he's on injured reserve, so he's not even there anymore. So it's going to be the Vidal show. It already was, but Vidal is a great start, like a low running back 1, high running back 2. The Titans are giving up the 3rd most points to running backs, so it's a great start. And then at wide receiver, you got Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnston, Ladd McConkey. One or two of these guys will probably be great for fantasy. It's just so hard to predict who. Ladd McConkey has been kind of hot lately, but at the start of the year, we were kind of more worried about him. So I think you can put either of these guys in the lineup. Quentin Johnston has been cold lately, but that could definitely switch at any given time. So, if you want to go with who's been kind of the guy lately, Ladd McConkey is probably the one you want, and then Keenan Allen, and then Quentin Johnston. But wouldn't surprise me at all if Quentin Johnston has a big game and Ladd and or Keenan Allen kind of just do much. And then another receiver to muddy the waters even more is tight end Oronde Gadsden. He's been phenomenal the last 2 weeks. So last week he was 5 for 77 and a touchdown on 5 targets. The week before that, 7 for 164 and a touchdown on 9 targets. And then even the week before that, he saw 8 targets, turned into 7 for 68. So if you have him, unless you already have like a Bowers, Kittle, Kraft, Warren, or McBride, you're probably starting him. Him versus Jake Ferguson is a tough call. Ferguson had been arguably the best tight end in fantasy, then got goosed last week against the Broncos. I would still be looking to get Ferguson back in the lineup, but him versus Gatson is very tough. But when you have this many weapons in the receiving room, not everyone can eat every single week. So especially if the Chargers don't force the issue on offense, you could see some disappearing acts, but you're probably starting most of these guys in most situations. And then another game that is kind of projected to be a blowout. The LA Rams are hosting the New Orleans Saints. The Rams at 5-2, the Saints at 1-7, 43.5 point over under. The Rams are 14-point home favorites. And Tyler Shuck is going to get the start at quarterback for the Saints. Kamara and Shaheed are questionable for the Saints. Looks like Kamara is trending in the right direction. It just says questionable for Shaheed. And then for the Rams, Puka Nacua should be back for this game. So that is good news for all the people who drafted him. But let's start with the Saints side of things, just because I think it's a little easier. So Spencer Rattler's out as the starter. Tyler Shuck is in. So obviously not looking to start Tyler, even though that's a great name. My goodness, my fork is like all over the place. Kamara is not a must start at this point by any means. And the Rams are the second toughest matchup for running backs. So, and he's questionable. So, he's a running back, a high running back 3, low running back 2 at this point. And you hope he PPRs his way to fantasy goodness and that Tyler Shuck throws him the ball more than Rattler was, but he really hasn't been seeing much fantasy production at all. Chris Olave had a good thing going with Spencer Rattler. You can still start him, but now you have the variable of the new quarterback. Will he see the same target volume? And they are going to be probably getting blown out. So there are probably going to be in the game script where, they're going to be throwing the ball and Olave could PPR his way to some good production, but he's still in that wide receiver 2 range, but there's a little more risk this week just with the new quarterback. And then, Shaheed, he's a big play guy, with the expected game script, maybe he makes a big play. But he's not someone you have to start by any means. But if you're looking for a bomb touchdown, maybe he gets it. And then Jawan Johnson has kind of fallen off a little bit, unfortunately. More of a tight end 2 at this point. Not really getting it done production-wise, so you most likely have better options. But the last 2 weeks, 8 and 7 targets. 5 for 53 and then 5 for 79 before that. So, it's still someone to pay attention to, but probably not start this week. And then on the Rams side of the ball, Kyren Williams is a great start, especially if, with the projected game script with them probably having a lead. He hasn't been scoring the touchdowns as much as the past this season, just because Devontae Adams is pretty involved as a receiver on the goal line. But Kyren is still a running back 1 start. Matthew Stafford is streamable as a low quarterback 1, high quarterback 2. I'm a little worried that if they're blowing out the Saints, Stafford doesn't need to throw the ball much, but given the usage on the goal line, we might see, enough passing touchdowns to warrant a good start. I'm deciding between him and Trevor Lawrence in my Dynasty League with Jalen Hurts on bye. Right now I have Stafford in there, but he's probably safer, but I don't know if he's going to need to do much. So we'll see where the touchdowns go. And then Puka Nacua is back. You start him as a must start. And then Devontae Adams is also a wide receiver 1. And you're not looking to start any tight ends there. So that matchup is pretty simple. Speaking of that Jags game with Trevor Lawrence, they are traveling to face the Las Vegas Raiders. The Jacksonville Jags are 4-3. The Raiders are 2-5. Where's that line? 43.5 point over under. The Jaguars are 3-point road favorites. I think they're clearly the better team. Just a matter of where will the fantasy points go. So Travis Hunter got put on injured reserve, which is he's expected to miss at least 5 weeks due to a quadriceps and hip injury that includes a ligament tear. That's what I'm seeing according to Jordan Schultz on ESPN. Oh, I'm sorry. I just gave you fake news. Oh my gosh. That was my computer literally like refreshed and I was reading the wrong thing. That is Brenton Strange. On October 10th, he got put on IR. So it looks like he's still going to be out. But Travis Hunter is on injured reserve. I was going to say, I thought he had a knee injury. It must have been a misreport. But no, he does have a knee injury. I haven't heard anything about the severity of it. Maybe I should Google that quick. Travis Hunter injury. He's going to miss at least the next 4 weeks. It says ACL intact. So some sort of knee injury, might miss 4 weeks, might miss more. That is Travis Hunter, wide receiver, rookie wide receiver / corner for the Jacksonville Jags. So he was kind of turning it on a little bit. So it's a very unfortunate injury for him, but at least it doesn't sound like it's super serious. Like it's not like an ACL tear or something from what I'm gathering. So on the Jags side of the ball, Brian Thomas Jr. at wide receiver, he's been very disappointing. I drafted him over Jonathan Taylor in the league, and I super regret that. But with no Hunter there, maybe his volume gets a little more secure. He's been seeing really good volume every week though, and it just hasn't turned into much. He's had at least 6 targets every single game. He's had like 12 targets and 10 targets a couple games. He's had 6 or 7 targets every single game, and then 2 games he's had 12 and 10. And it really hasn't turned into much for fantasy, but I think you're likely still starting him. He's more of a wide receiver 2 at this point, but he's talented, and I think you just keep putting him in the lineup. And the Raiders are the third. Looks like they're the. Let me see. The Raiders are the 3rd best matchup for wide receivers in points per game in fantasy. Parker Washington gets a bit of a bump with the injury. To Travis Hunter, more of a stash DFS play, but worth kind of monitoring how he looks. And then Travis Etienne, it's been a little bit slower lately than it was to start the season, but he's in that running back 2 range. Maybe he sees a few more targets with Travis Hunter out. And then Trevor Lawrence is kind of a higher quarterback 2. He's been very disappointing based on the hype he had coming into the league, but he's playable. And then on the Raiders side of the ball, Genty has kind of been disappointing. I think he's a talented player, but the offense just isn't good. Jacksonville's a little bit tougher of a matchup for running backs on the season, but Genty is still a high running back 2, and you hope he makes a big play. And that the offense doesn't limit him too much. Geno Smith has looked really bad at quarterback. I wouldn't be looking to start him. Wide receiver, I mean, you got Jacoby Myers, who's been disappointing. Trey Tucker, who had a game. He can make a big play, but, if I had to play one, it'd be Jacoby Myers as like a wide receiver 3 or 4. But until I see something and I see Geno Smith play better, I don't really want to start a receiver here. And then the big news that I should have mentioned earlier, Brock Bowers at tight end is back for the Raiders. So he, was like arguably the best tight end in the league. Had a good week 1, 5 for 103 on 8 targets. And then he kind of suffered an injury. He was playing through it and really was not good for fantasy. They held him out weeks 5 through 7, had a bye week in week 8, and now he's back in week 9. I think him being healthy is going to make him look a lot better on the field and put up production for fantasy. Geno Smith and the offense is obviously going to limit his upside a little bit, but I think he's still someone that now that he's presumably healthy, removed from the injury, he's a locked in tight end 1 start. The only guys I would for sure play over him would be McBride, Warren, Kraft, and probably George Kittle, just with the matchup. Someone's coughing super loud out there. If you did want to play like Jake Ferguson or Gadsden over him and wait a week, you could if you drafted those guys late or picked them up and have that flexibility, you can. But I would probably just play Bowers at that point. Ferguson seems like a little bit safer than Gadsden just because, I know Ferguson had a goose last week, but I feel like Gadsden, we could see a disappearing act from him any week now. But how do you go away from that? Man, that's a tough range to like really figure out. But Bowers, in my opinion, is the most talented, tight end, like generationally talented tight end. So, if you want to wait a week, you can, but he's a top 5 type of play this week. And then this is a very exciting game. The Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo. Chiefs are 5-3. The Bills are 5-2. This game is a 52.5 point over under. The Chiefs are 1.5 point road favorites. So a lot of points are expected here. Isaiah Pacheco is out at running back for the Chiefs. So Kareem Hunt gets a bit of a boost. So he is definitely startable. I think he's actually a pretty decent start this week. The Bills are the 6th best matchup for running backs on the season. And, Kareem Hunt, it looked like he might be done, but with Pacheco out, it's going to be him and Brashard Smith. And Kareem Hunt has been kind of a good touchdown scorer this season. So I would not be shocked at all if he gets in the end zone. And it might not look great, but he's probably going to be the lead back there. Brashard Smith will probably be involved. He's worth a stash or a deep league play as a running back 3. He kind of profiles as more of like a scat back, like wide receiver out of the backfield type of guy. But in a pinch, you can play him. Would prefer to stash him and see how he looks. But, after this game, it's a bye week, and then they're on the road in Denver. Pacheco might be back by then. So it might be a while before you can play him if you don't start him this week. But he's in that running back 3 range. I would prefer Kareem Hunt, obviously. Mahomes is going to be a great start. The Bills are the 2nd toughest matchup for quarterbacks, but with this over-under, with how good Mahomes has been playing, you're not benching him. He's a must start, and so is Rashee Rice at wide receiver. He's been so good since coming back from injury. He's the pass catcher you want there. Xavier Worthy, I don't really want to start him as anything other than like a wide receiver 3. In this game script, in this game environment, if a lot of points are scored, he might put up good production for fantasy. So if you are struggling at the position, you can put him in there as a high wide receiver 3, but you don't have to play Worthy. And then Travis Kelce at tight end. He's startable. The Bills are the 2nd toughest matchup, but I don't know. I don't read a ton into that. Kelce is, I thought it would be bad for him with Rashee Rice back. The first game back, he was 3 for. Wait, when did Rice come back? What week was that? So Rashee Rice, he came back week 7. He's seen 10 and 9 targets. Yeah, he's been so good. 7 for 42 and 2 touchdowns on very limited snaps. 9 for 93 and a touchdown. Rashee Rice is going to be great. So in week 7, when Rice came back, Kelce was 3 for 54 on 3 targets. Season low in targets, was kind of worried. But then the next week, 6 for 99 and a touchdown on 8 targets. And it was phenomenal for fantasy. So I'm willing to play him as a low to mid tight end 1. Looks like left tackle Josh Simmons is out for the Chiefs. And then right guard Trey Smith is listed as questionable. So little offensive line update there. And then on the Bills side of the ball, Joshua Palmer, receiver, is going to be out, so it might not seem like a big deal, but the receivers are already kind of tough to play, so any absence there could lead to, more volume for the other guys. But it's kind of weird. Like the Bills are, one of the best offenses in the league, but I don't really want to start any of their receivers. If I had to start one, I'd probably start Khalil Shakir. The Chiefs are the 4th toughest matchup. They're the 4th toughest matchup for receivers in the league. But with the game script, Shakir is a wide receiver 3, and he could he could make some catches, and the ball has to go somewhere. We just don't know where. Keon Coleman, I don't really want to play him, but I will say if he got in the end zone, it wouldn't surprise me. So you probably have better options. He's a wide receiver 4. I'd play guys like Alec Pierce, Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison over him, but DFS, deep league, maybe he's worth a shot, but just with the game environment. Dalton Kincaid came back last week, only had 1 catch, but you can go back to him as a low tight end 1 just because the position is gross. The Chiefs are the 4th toughest matchup in the league for tight ends. And then at running back, James Cook is someone you're pretty much auto starting. The Chiefs are giving up the 6th fewest points to running backs, but in this type of game, you don't really go away from your star like James Cook. He's been so good that you pretty much play him each and every week. And then Josh Allen is also a must start. So There's going to be probably points scored. You know, for the Bills, it's going to be a little tough to know where the ball is going to go, but I think there's going to be opportunity for someone there to do well, other than Josh Allen and James Cook, hopefully. And we've got 2 games left here, the prime time games. I'm surprised that game isn't prime time. Seems kind of weird, but instead, Sunday Night Football, we got the Seattle Seahawks on the road against the Washington Commanders. Seahawks at 5-2, Commanders at 3-5. The Seahawks are 3-point road favorites, 48.5-point over-under. Jane Daniels is back for the Commanders. Wide receiver Terry McLaurin is out for the Commanders, so we could see a consolidation of targets to wide receiver Deebo Samuel and tight end Zach Ertz, my start of the week. Luke McCaffrey, Chris Moore, you know, DFS, Sunday Night Football, like primetime slate. You want to take a shot on one of them, that's fine, but probably not in a regular league. But Deebo has been kind of disappointing, but with McLaurin out, with Jane Daniels back, he's still playable as a wide receiver 2. And then Zach Ertz, like I said, he's my start of the week. He's a borderline tight end 1 start. I really don't want to start Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt. Bill, jeez, I just burped so hard my head almost fell off. Or hiccup? Burp? What even was that? I don't know. I must have cooked up something too spicy. Yeah, Bill has not been good. So I'm totally cool not starting him. I know he's been like a fun kind of meme, and maybe he's the guy and gets in the end zone, but he's more of a, you know, high running back 3, I guess, at this point. Maybe a low running back 2 if you're confident in him. But and then Jane Daniels, I would start him. You know, he's coming back from an injury. Maybe he's not super mobile, but I don't know how you really bench him. Like maybe if you had Danny Dimes and you've been riding him, you could play him. Dak, who we're going to talk about in a little bit, Drake May. So maybe there's options you could play over him, but for the most part, you're probably starting him. And then on the Seahawks side of the ball, Cooper Kupp is questionable at receiver. I'm not really looking to play him either way, but JSN is a stud at wide receiver, bro. Like he's been unbelievable. I drafted him in 1 league and I felt kind of like reluctant to. I kind of felt like I had to. I wasn't super high on him. I thought this team would run the ball a lot more. I was worried about Darnold looking good, leaving Kevin O'Connell, and it's just worked. He's arguably the best receiver to roster in fantasy. He's a must start against the Commanders. And speaking of Darnold, you can stream him as well. The Commanders are the 7th best matchup for quarterbacks. He's a solid quarterback 2 start. You know, him versus, I'd probably start him over like Trevor Lawrence. You know, he's probably safer than Joe Flacco, but Flacco has just been balling out lately. You know, Flacco with that shoulder injury could take 1 hit and be out for the game, but you know, Darnold is a decent start this week. 2 quarterback league, great guy to play. You know, there might be opportunities at running back here for the Seahawks. It's been really disappointing. Charbonnet has been very involved. Kenneth Walker has not been as involved as we hope. So, Charbonnet has been getting kind of the goal line work. I'd probably lean Charbonnet. Both are maybe low running back 2s at this point. And if Charbonnet gets the goal line work, I'd probably lean him. You can play either one. Kenneth Walker is always a big play away from having a good game for fantasy. It's 17 carries last week. Didn't turn into much. Only 66 yards, no targets, or I should say 2 weeks ago before their bye. Yeah, Zach Charbonnet, 2 touchdowns, week 7. He's played 1, 2, 3, 4. He's played 6 games. He scored in 4 of them. 1, 1, 1, and 2. So you can throw him in the lineup. And then if Cooper Kupp is out, Torrey Horton might get a boost. Probably not looking to start him, but maybe DFS could put him in there. And then at tight end, AJ Barner and Elijah Arroyo are always kind of like guys I like to like. They seem interesting, but in reality, you probably don't want to play them. More of a dynasty stash or maybe like a DFS type of play. But, you know, Barner can always get in the end zone. And we got one more game. Last game, ladies and gentlemen, lock in. The Arizona Cardinals traveling to take on the Dallas Cowboys. Cardinals are 2-5. Cowboys are 3-4-1. 54.5-point over-under. Highest of the week. Cowboys are 3-point home favorites. So the big news here is Kyler Murray. He's listed as questionable. I thought I heard he was out. I thought I heard that Brissett was the starter. Yeah, it seems like will not start. It just says he will not start. Though he won't start in Dallas, Murray could reportedly have a role in the Cardinals offense. So I don't know what that means. I picked up Brissett in a 2-quarterback league where Ertz, Baker, and Fields are all on bye. So I'm rolling out Knicks in the worst matchup in fantasy against the Texans. And then Jacoby Brissett in a great matchup against the Cowboys, but Murray might be involved. So we just kind of have to see monitor the news on that. I can't predict the future on that. That's an interesting one. Trayvon Diggs is still going to be out for Dallas at corner. So let's start with the Cowboy side of things here. That's the way easier side. Dak Prescott is a great start at quarterback. He's been great for fantasy and in real life. The Cardinals defense is pretty solid, but if you have him, he's a mid quarterback one. Javonte Williams, he's been super great for where you drafted him. So you're starting him as a low running back one, I would say. And then at wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb is a must start. And then Pickens, even though his upside is a little bit limited now that CeeDee Lamb is back in the lineup, he's still a borderline wide receiver one, honestly. I think his production is pretty safe, and he's still talented enough to make a big play, but he's a little bit nerfed with CeeDee Lamb back as the one. And then Jake Ferguson at tight end, even though, he got, I believe he got goosed last week, right? Against Denver. Yeah, he got one target, didn't catch it. The Cardinals are the 7th best matchup for tight ends. He's really good. I think he'll bounce back and be a nice tight end one. And then for the Cardinals, I guess we'll see who the quarterback is. I think it's Brissett. I'm playing him in a 2-quarterback league, but would not recommend him in most situations. That's just with a ton of unfortunate bye weeks. Bam Knight at running back, I almost made him a start of the week. He is interesting as a running back 2. He should be the starter. They released Michael Carter, and then they signed him again. DeMarcado is still there. I don't think he's going to be super involved. Michael Carter works with the Cardinals starters Thursday and Friday. So, oh man, I'd probably lean Bam Knight and then Michael Carter. And I'm not playing DeMarcado. Trey Benson and James Conner are obviously... Conner's going to be out for the year. Trey Benson should be back in like a week or 2, I think, is what I heard. Is that true? We'll see. So I think Zonovan Knight, Bam Knight as they call him, is the leader. But again, that's another thing we got to kind of see what the deal is news-wise. And then Marv, I should say, though, I only bring them up because the Cowboys are... Let me pull this up here. They're the best matchup for quarterbacks, the 5th best matchup for running backs, and the 2nd best matchup for receivers. So there's opportunities here for someone. Now, if any team is going to go in there and do bad against the Cowboys defense, historically bad defense, it's the Cardinals. But Marvin Harrison, not Marvin Harrison. I think you play him as a wide receiver 2. It's been rough. I think you play him. If you want to take a shot on Michael Wilson or Zay Jones in like DFS, you can. I think it's kind of disgusting. And I probably just wouldn't. But if you're in like a Monday night slate and you want to kind of differentiate your lineup, Zay Jones limited at practice on Friday. But why am I talking about Zay Jones? Anyways, and then Trey McBride is the only guy I'm really like, yes, must start. Against tight ends, the Cowboys are ranked. Oh, they're a little stingier on the season. 19th. Again, tight end strength of schedule stuff is kind of iffy, but they're tied for 18th, it looks like. So anyways, that's the last game, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Hope you cook up, hope you chef up a little victory in week 9, stir the pot, and good luck to everyone except our opponents in week 9. Happy Halloween. I hope you instill spooky fright into everyone you face. And I will see you all in the next one. Peace.